Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Again, always brought to you by Create From Why. If you are struggling or want to just have a conversation around how to really make sure your identity lines up with what you do, reach out team at createfromwhy.com and we will have a conversation. Today we have a special guest, Chad Bruckner from Philadelphia. He was in law enforcement 13 years as well as a combat veteran. So we're going to have a very good, interesting conversation today around things. He has gone through similar things to myself, that depression, that burnout. And so we're going to have that great conversation. As usual, I like to say, take one thing away from this episode. Take one thing away, implement it. 2 degrees every day. Imagine where you'll be in 365. So without further ado, Chad, I'd like to let you introduce yourself because you can probably do it better than I can, most definitely. And tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you got to where you are now, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Appreciate you having me on, man. This has been following your show for a while, and I know you had Ryan, our co-host, on the show, and he talks highly of you. So thanks for having me on. Um, I live in the Lehigh Valley, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia, but I was born and raised in Philadelphia in that area. So I'm 41 years old, and I served. Went in the Army at 17 years old. I didn't really have any options. I was not. I didn't apply myself in school. We didn't have any money. So when I graduated high school at 17, it was pretty much, hey, you want to go in the Army? Yeah, sure, let's do it. I come from a service-oriented family, so my uncle served, my dad served, my little brother followed me and served, so it wasn't totally out of the ordinary. But did the Army for 4 years. I went in 1998. Was supposed to get out in 2002. Of course, 9/11 happened, and that just changed everything. So I did another 4 years. Ended up being deployed to Iraq, and did a combat tour there in the Sunni Triangle. I got out when I was 25 after 8 years, and I had no college education. I was living at home with my parents. I had no car, no, no kids, no girlfriend. My friends are 25 now; they're married. Some had kids already, had careers, and so I was playing catch up. But luckily, I met my wife, who's a school teacher, had her own house, an absolute rock star, amazing person, and I wouldn't be here today without her. I just want to say that. Um, so I met my wife, and then she gave me purpose. She's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm going to be a law enforcement officer." So it was a bit the only thing I knew because it was similar to the military. So went to the police academy, put myself through, got picked up pretty quickly by a police department just north of Philadelphia. It's actually the same county I grew up in. I played baseball, traveling baseball in this town. So I knew the town. It was very personal to me. When I had an opportunity to work there, it was let's do it. So I did that. I ended up staying there for 13 years. I did patrol for 4 years. I quickly just loved it. I fell in love with policing and law enforcement, and really got into narcotics enforcement. Wanted to be a detective, so I was lucky. In 4 years, I got promoted to detective, which is pretty uncommon in a small department, um, but it did, and I loved it. Well, I was undercover right away. Did 3 years of that, doing narcotics and search warrants, and had the big beard and the baggy jeans, and kind of looked like a bum. But I really loved that job because the town I worked in was only about 19,000 people, so you felt it was tangible. Every time you did something good or bad, you could feel that reaction from the community. And it was small. It was a small little borough. So, I remember one time we did a search warrant, and it was a lot of drugs being sold in the street. And we led the defendant out. We're cleaning up the evidence, loading in the car, and the neighbor looks out and just kind of silently claps. And I just do the thumbs up. And I just remember, like, I came home that night, laid my head on the pillow, and was just, wow, what a job I have, and what an impact I'm making, and all of us at my PD. So it was just a great feeling. So did that for 13 years. Started to go through some struggles at the end, some struggles that were always there, I believe. Certainly got worse doing the job, policing. I didn't really address my combat experience and some of the fallout and PTSI and depression that came out of that. But I wore a mask, Chris. I was really good at wearing a mask and smiling. And then it subsided for a little bit because I was so busy doing the drugs, and we had started having kids. I had 3 kids, and but towards the end of my 13 years, it definitely started to bubble up. There was some stuff that happened at the police department I worked in, separate from that, irrelevant from that. I was definitely going through something, and definitely burnout, definitely depressed, the hopelessness, smiling at work. Nobody knows anything. And then I'm driving home and thinking about driving my car off the highway. And just the feeling of thinking that was like, I'm in control, because I felt like I had no control over anything. I felt like that I had to ask permission for everything, and I had no control over my future, no ownership of it. So And I know you can relate to that hopelessness when that takes a hold of you. It's a scary place because you feel like this is all it's ever going to be. It's never going to get better. So, but I'm lucky because I was on the peer support. I'm on the peer support team. I still am on our local county. Did a bunch of mental health certifications. I'm a peer support officer. So I was able to recognize the signs in myself. And it was a weird dynamic looking in the mirror and I'm talking to myself like I'm talking to a peer advocate that I'm mentoring. But, I'm looking in myself in the mirror crying, thinking, I need to get myself fixed here. So luckily God gave me the gene of self-awareness and accountability. So I didn't make too many excuses. I got to work and got into therapy. Now I have 4 therapists for EMDR, TRP, psychotherapy, and then my psychiatrist. So I just really embraced the advocacy and the wellness. And I knew my family was counting on me and I wanted to get clear-minded and get healthy. During that process, what I didn't expect was my perspective changed. And I didn't know that. As I started to grow, as I started to really evolve, as I challenged my own thoughts and perceptions, the world just started to look different to me. The police department looked different to me. The profession looked different to me. I didn't hate it. I didn't resent it. It just looked different. I asked myself, can I continue to do this job? And as much as I loved it, I was just growing misaligned from what I wanted to do anymore. And even though I love policing, I knew it was time for me to leave. I was 40 years old and it was a young man show. And I was in government for 21 years and it was just time for something new. So now I'm an entrepreneur. I own a private investigation firm and we service over 160 clients here in Pennsylvania, municipal clients. And I'm having a great time, loving life. I wear slides to work. I wear a t-shirt to work and nobody says anything to me about it. So I love it.
And I don't know. Tell me this real quick. Because in law enforcement and military and that, always clean shaven. Obviously, you said you had a big beard and stuff doing narcotics and that, but there was always, there would have been some sort of grooming thing if you came off of that and that. Do you now have some days where you're like, I'm just not going to shave. I just can't. I just
Oh, totally. Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, now my wife loves it, so I just keep it, I'll trim it down a little bit, but it'll stay just about this usually.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I have sometimes where I'm like this morning I shaved and I was like, but then there's sometimes where I'm like, I got 3 or 4 days. Whereas in the past it's like every day. Shit, I'm like,
Hey, every day.
yeah,
Oh man, I shaved every day for so many years. I forget what,
yeah.
my face was getting all scratchy and it's just brutal.
Yeah, it's funny. All right, so amazing. You've done a lot. You mentioned some stuff that I took a few notes around the trauma around the policing or around military and not recognizing that you dealt with that. And I know there's so many. I just want to touch on this real quick. I know there's so many police officers that come out of the military because they're like, military, what am I going to do? Okay, policing's similar-ish. Would you say that it actually is similar after being in the military for so long and then going into policing?
No, no. I think policing is so much harder than the military. There's so many dynamics to it. One, the military, you're kind of isolated. You're given missions and you have operation orders and you're carrying these missions often in parts of the world that are away from your homeland. So it just, there's a big separation. But as you know, Chris, I mean, policing, you're with your citizens, you're with your population, your countrymen. And I think that in alone is a challenge because I never wanted to have an ego or wanted to be like, I wanted the community to know, like, I am you, I'm part of you. I'm here for you. I would sacrifice for you. I'm not better than you. But I think just policing over time, the more years you get on, that chip on your shoulder sits, because of the authority you have. So I just think it's so much different because if you don't check your ego, if you don't balance your life, and it's so easy to get obsessed with law enforcement and overtime and put your family on the back burner. I mean, every cops do it every day. So I just think there's so many facets that make it, for me, more challenging than the military.
It's interesting you say that because I actually say that quite often, that I believe that trauma wise, I think that you can, maybe not these days, but it's always been, even still, trauma wise, especially in the early, when after 9/11 and that, which you would have been encountered in that, there's a lot of massive trauma, like a traumatic event, like a big event that happens. I remember when I was going through PTSD and the counselor was like, you're burned out from probably a lot of PTSD. I was never officially diagnosed with PTSD, but I can see it. And I was like, but I haven't seen anything massively traumatic. Yeah, I've seen some dead bodies, but whatever. And so I used to always refer to it because my cousin was Army he did 2 tours, one Iraq, one Afghanistan. His second tour was cut short from a suicide bomber at a checkpoint. He lost a few of the guys that he worked with. He was an MP. And I was like, I haven't had anything like that happen, so how could I have PTSD? but then now the research has come out that you get that accumulative, and law enforcement has it, and so and so I always sit there and I go, I think law enforcement is way harder because you're living, you're eating it, you're breathing it. You're not able to go home and be like, that's over there, I'm here. Yes, maybe I want to be over there and helping and making an impact, but you're in and amongst it. You're looking at your fellow citizens. You're looking at, you're so high alert because everybody's out to get you instead of maybe just the Taliban or that enemy. So
Yeah.
I like what you said there. So you did 8 years.
Chris, if I can interrupt real quick,
Yeah, go
because you
for it,
just
man.
touched
Yeah.
on something. You touched on something that I think is really, really important that we talk about. And I didn't know this until I went through it. Now I know, but trauma is different for all of us, like the way our brain processes it. And I think in law enforcement, we do such a bad job of comparing trauma. Like, why I was on the same call as you, you're fine, I'm a mess. There must be something wrong with me. Where I'm comparing myself to you because you were there and you're fine. We got to stop doing that. Like, your brain is your brain, my brain is my brain. We might be on a call and it doesn't bother you that much. You don't have kids and it's tearing me up. But then the next time we're on a call with a domestic violence victim, it doesn't really bother me, but your mom was beaten growing up, or, so we have to stop comparing trauma. Like, we all live individual lives, have our own brains. We're going to react to these things differently. For me, and it's different for everybody, but for me, the trauma from the cumulative PTSD affected me more greatly in law enforcement than the military, bar none.
Yeah.
It just was a snowball effect. I remember doing a child porn case and having my first panic attack. And I didn't know what panic attack was. I didn't know. I just thought I got sweaty and couldn't breathe, thought I was going to die. 10 minutes later, I come out of it. Oh, go back to work. Like, that's not normal. Seeing child porn is not normal. And those reactions aren't normal. So we got to just do a good job of talking about it. Doesn't mean we're broke. Doesn't mean we're weak. But it's not normal to see those things. So when we have reactions, instead of judging each other or comparing each other, let's just talk about it.
I'm glad you brought that up because I remember so when I left, and for viewers, some might know it, but for some of the new ones, so you're aware, when I went through all my burnout, my PTSD, and that, I took 2.5 months, came back to the U.S., bought a motorcycle, did 8,000 miles camping off the back of a motorcycle, just to reconnect with myself and refine myself. And towards the end, I stopped at my dad's cousin's place in northern LA in Santa Clarita. My cousin, he's like a second cousin, came and saw me. He's the one that was in U.S. Army and that. And he came and saw me with his wife, and now he has 2 kids and that. But at the time, they didn't. And I went out to dinner with them, and I was talking to him, and he's like, oh, what's going on in that, and what's up with this trip? I've been seeing you on Facebook and that. And I was like, told him and that. I was like, but I just don't feel like I can really say that I have PTSD because what you've gone through and all that. And he's like, Chris, it's different for everybody. He's like, you don't have to see somebody get blown up in front of you to have PTSD.
Totally.
And that moment
abnormal
there,
events.
That moment there, I was like, okay, I can accept that I have all this is going through. And so, yeah, it is. We've got to stop comparing ourselves. I mean, we all have past trauma, and when I train people to get into the police, I go through a lot of this because it actually is what hinders them from passing their fitness testing even. And then, helping law enforcement, that you got to recognize you have your own past trauma that you brought into this role. You brought into this job from your childhood. We all have it. And parents out there, they all do the best job that they can with what they have. And they're going to screw up their kids no matter what. And the moment, we all get screwed up because we're all learning and we all interpret things differently. And we bring that in once we can recognize and release that and go, okay, this is where that's coming from. And this is why that child pornography, that dead body affects me, that advising job, which was for me, was the thing, the advising jobs, the notification jobs. This is why they're affecting me so much. Okay, cool. I can accept that. And I can now release it.
Yeah. And you know what, Chris, I'm glad you brought that up because these are the conversations and I want to do a little role play if we can for a second.
Yeah, man.
Because you made me think about this. So we're working together. We're on the same squad. We go to a call. We didn't even see the body. Somebody gets killed, unfortunately, car accident or something. We have to make a notification. We go to the house. You and me are partners. You're taking the lead. You're knocking on the door. You tell the parents. They're crying. They fall into your arms. You're rubbing their back. That is not a normal situation. That is painful. Yeah. So we leave that call, and I can tell you're a little upset. I say, hey, everything all right? And I'm role playing what I think we should do. This is not what we do, and this is what we have to get to. And you're open. You're like, yeah, man, that really bothered me. Hey, why don't you tell me about what you're feeling?
Yeah.
And then we sit in the car and you're telling me about what you're feeling. Oh man, I can understand why you feel that way. You see, we're having this like very inclusive, non-judgmental conversation. At any point did we say we're weak or there's something wrong with you? Like, why do we just need this? And I feel like if we talk about it, you're going to get over it so much more. It's going to help you. It's a
You
part of
get,
it.
yeah,
It's good for you.
I 100% agree with you. When you actually sit down and talk about it, and I remember reading Emotional Law Enforcement for Survival. Emotional survival for law enforcement. My tongue didn't want to work there.
Kevin
Um,
Gilmartin.
yeah, and I remember reading it, and it was about. I remember getting told to read it when I was actually in the depths of what I call my hell, and I was doing a ride along with a sheriff deputy in my home county, and he's like, "Oh," I was telling him kind of some of the stuff that was going on in that, and he's like, "Oh, have you read this book?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, you should get it." And I went, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah," and just kind of went, "Nah, I'm okay. I'm fine. I can work through this. I can make it work." And I read that book. I actually managed to buy it, and I read it about a year and a bit after I got out of the place. And I was reading through it, and I was like, ah, oh, I see. And then I go to my wife. She'd be in her bathroom, like getting ready for bed or whatever. And I'd be like, "Did I do this?" And I'd read it out, and she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Are
Yeah.
you sure?" And she's like, "Yeah." And so, but I remember something in there specifically, and then he goes, "The reason that at that time when he wrote the book, firefighters don't normally get affected by PTSD as much or as severely as police officers, as cops turn up to that traffic crash or whatever that we talked about. The cops are there, they do all their stuff, and they're doing all that. Firefighters are there, they're cutting people out, they're doing all their different stuff. Firefighters hop out and finish up, they finish everything up, they hop back into their truck. There's 6 or 7 or 4 or 5 of them in the truck, and they all drive back, and they're all talking about it all the whole way back to the station.
Hmm.
Cops finish up, they all hop into their cars individually, one on their own, maybe 2 up, most likely 1 up. They hop in their cars and they go off to the next job, or they go to the next traffic
It's
stop
true.
or whatever it is, and they never talk about it. And as soon as I read that, I was like, this is why we need debriefs. And I love
Yeah.
that you brought that up when we're 2 up, because here in New Zealand we're 2 up most places unless you're more rural. And so you hop in the car, and those times where I had a more senior or even more junior officer ask me, "Hey, how did that job, how did you find that job?" And we actually talked about it. I don't remember those jobs. Those don't affect me as much. The ones where we didn't are the ones that still I have to process because they have so much grip in there. And we as officers we get to that stage where we're like, no, 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 no. That's talking about is weak. We don't need to talk about it. Just leave it there. We're alpha males. I guarantee you talk about that, like you said, that next notification job that you go to is going to be that much more easier, and you're going to have that much more compassion, and that person is going to go, this cop, I can tell you this from experience from training people to get into place. The amount of people that want to become cops because a cop was there for them and had compassion when they were in the hardest time of their life because somebody passed away or they were in a domestic and that cop cared about them that little bit is probably about 70%, 70 to 80%. And so
Wow.
and so that brings that into perspective, and I haven't thought about that until just now when you brought this. It is that compassion is so much. So I'm
Yeah.
glad that we went through that, because I think that will help. I know that will help any of you that are listening or watching. Think
Yeah,
about that
and I'm
next
gonna.
time.
I'll just add that we lost a 10-month-old to a drowning. Mom, it looked appeared to be a drug overdose. Her mom passed out, put her 10-month-old kid in the bath, and passed out on bed. It was horrific. So we're doing CPR. We end up losing them, and I was so over. I've had 3 kids, and I've had a 10-month-old 3 different times. So holding babies, like it came flooding over me. So the baby died. We had to set up a crime scene because it was a suspicious death. We're detectives, and there's going to be an investigation. And I had to run out of the house because I'm on the verge of crying, and I'm choking it in, and I'm choking it in. I was so embarrassed, and I look back and I'm like, what was I so embarrassed about?
Hmm.
That's not normal, and that's okay. I'm a human being. I'm a father.
Hmm.
Why can't I be emotional? Like, we got to flip the script, and I get passionate about it, man, because it's still happening right now.
Yep.
There's still cops being ridiculed by their leaders and by peers for the way they're feeling, and it's just we got to do a better job at it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And and as you said, you and I are you said when you're telling when you're telling a little bit about your story in the beginning around the fact of life change and perspective, the perspective change for the job.
Mm.
And so for those that are listening, I know you're hearing us talk about this and you're like, what are these guys smoking or whatever it is that's coming in that, as I call it, that little demon in your head is saying. And it's because perspective does change. And so I want to talk a little bit about, if we go back into, your career in that, the perspective changed, but the lead up to, obviously you had the peer support, you were part of that, so you recognized some stuff. Can you think of a specific incident or time where you're like, no, 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 I'm done? Like when you looked, maybe it was a time you looked in the mirror and you're like, who the hell is this person I'm looking at? Was there anything that led up to that you believe was the catalyst for that awareness?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple things. I mean, I'll tell this story because it just sticks out to me first. And I am a social drinker. So weddings, events, weekends, I am not the guy to crack a beer, and I to each their own. I'm just saying I didn't grow up that way. It's not my natural, that's not my baseline to drink a beer every day or drink every day. But in 2019, I was just on the verge of horrible depression, suicidal ideation. I'm drinking 3, 4 double IPAs. I'm starting at 10, 38, 11 in the morning on my off days. And by noon or 1, I'm buzzing. By 2 or 3, I'm drunk, and kids are at school. And it was just a mess of a time for me. And I remember my wife, she's a school teacher. She got home from work and we had dinner with the family, and maybe later that night. And I'm probably drunk. I mean, if not drunk, buzzing, or probably smelled of alcohol and glossy eyes. And, we had a conversation in the kitchen. Kids were playing after dinner, and she said, what's going on? Like, I mean, she knew I was depressed. She knew what was going on at work. Um, but she didn't know the extent of it. And she said, I never forget, she goes, "You're just drinking a lot." And I said, "Because that's what cops do. We go to work, we fight bad guys, we save lives, and we come home and get effed up. That's what we do. You got it?" And she just kind of nodded her head. And I don't talk like that. I'm not a yeller or a screamer. I went up to bed, and I just thought of that, just weighed on me, just sat on my shoulder. And I'm like, luckily, I said, Jesus gave me the accountability and self-aware gene. I just said, that's not what cops do. Like, what did I just, like, I didn't recognize myself. And that's when I knew, like, this is not going to end well if I don't make some changes. So that wasn't like the aha moment, but it was like a series of some things like that I eventually, what really got me to change, I looked in the mirror. I'm crying in the mirror, looking at my reflection. And I asked myself, are you happy? Are you happy? And I answered my own question. I said, no. And then I asked myself a question again. Well, what are you going to do about it? And it was just in that moment I said, well, I'm not letting anybody win this thing. I control my actions. I control my thoughts. I was down. That's okay, but I'm going to learn from this. And I just started 911. I'm crying, calling not 911, but cold calling therapists, leaving crying messages. Please call me. I need help. So that was all part of the journey, and I'm grateful for that. I wouldn't change any of that because I learned so much, and it's made me a better friend. It's made me a better husband, maybe a better father, maybe a better person. So I can't be upset with that.
Yeah, no, no. And thanks for sharing that, because I know there's so many people out there that say things that they, wholeheartedly know is not them. And I had the same exact things. I came home one night from going to a dinner party or something, had one of those cake carry, that you put a cake in and you carry the cake wherever you're going. Had one of those, and my wife left it in the back seat. 2 in the morning, and I just let loose at her for leaving it in the back seat.
Wow. Wow.
And
Isn't that crazy though, right? It's like you jumped on her for that.
Yeah, I jumped on her for that because I didn't feel whatever it was going on, and and it had nothing to do with her or the cake tin. It had to do with everything that was going on at work. It had to do with, that was just the way for me to explode out of it, and that kind of, it touched a little bit, and I was like, oh, that's not really me. And then a few days later, or a little bit later, and this is my mind, and my wife will probably be like, no, it was completely different. But in my mind, it was, a little bit later. We were in bed and we were talking about stuff, and I was like, I feel nothing. I honestly feel nothing. I feel no compassion. I feel no love. I feel no hatred. I just feel nothing.
Mm.
I'm stopping people,
Wow.
and I feel like I'm just pissing people off. And so the easiest thing to do is just not feel anything.
Mm.
And a little bit later, I got some counseling in that after talking with a colleague, and then thought I dealt with everything, and then he decided to come back full force when I was on diplomatic protection, looking after VIPs.
Wow.
And that's, again, started feeling nothing. And that's when I actually ended up almost cheating on my wife, having those ideations, like literally sitting at a party. My wife was away overseas, or my wife was away at an event or something and working. And I was like, how do I crack onto her? How do I make a move? How do I do something?
Mm.
And I caught myself and I was like, this is not you. Who the hell are you? So I
Wow.
went home. I told my wife I wanted a divorce, and she went, we've been through a lot. You one more counseling session. And for some reason, because I'm a talker, as we can tell from these podcasts, I'm a talker, and so I was just like, okay, cool. And so she booked it. She ended up going on a trip overseas for a little bit for work, and then came back, and we did it. And that's when it just all started unraveling.
Hmm. Jeez,
And
man.
it's crazy, you know. And when we recognize that, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the trauma of all the different things that we see and deal with. What do you believe? How do you believe that those have an effect on how we act and show up at home?
How does trauma affect that?
Yeah.
Oh, it's the heart, but to me, it's the most heartbreaking thing, Chris. It is people that took an oath to serve their communities, good people. I believe every cop got into it for a good reason, took oaths to serve the community, probably did amazing things. And the trauma and the job changes them. And 10, 13, 18 years later, they're an alcoholic. And it's tens of thousands of cops. They're yelling at their kids or mean to their spouse. And it's just, that's not who they are. And they change as a result of the job. And we want to vilify them or say, oh, they changed. Nobody wants to say, well, let's look at how they changed or why they changed. Let's look at this profession that they're dealing. I mean, it's happening now. You have all these researchers that are really getting some hardcore data and sharing that. So it's good to see. But it breaks my heart when I hear these. I'm actually dealing with a friend now. This is a hard story because this is somebody that is absolutely one of the most virtuous people I'd met in my life ever. And the job has changed him. It's changed him to a degree where he's become an alcoholic and he's doing things on the side from his wife. And it just blows my mind because it's the furthest thing from him. But as I told him when we met, it's, you have to look at this job. You have to look at what's going on. Let's look at before you started. Let's look at your baselines. Let's look at where you are now. And we did that. We wrote it down and it was just like, whoa, like from social drinker to drinking 6 double IPAs every day. He said he drank 8 the other day in one day. It was like one evening. I'm like, dude, you're annihilated. He's like, oh man, I don't even remember. I'm like, so like we need to look at like behaviors and how they change over the time from this job. And I think we're going to learn that, and we're learning it now. This job is not only physically dangerous, but it's catastrophically dysfunctional towards our families if we're not mindful and put the work in.
Yeah. No, I can't say anything different. I totally agree. What do you believe is the way? Because it's great. I've always said I don't want to be the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. I know you can probably relate to that. That
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
your friend's going through right now. You're the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. I want to be the person, and I want to set things into place to be the guy who is on the other side of the cliff at the hill before you even walk up the trail. And you go, hey,
Yeah.
wait a second. And then there's another post. Hey, wait a second. You don't need to climb up here. And what do you believe is the most effective way after going through what you have and helping the people that you do now? What do you think is the most effective way of somebody could implement one thing in so that they never climb to the top of that hill and have the possibility of falling off that cliff?
Ooh, there's so many in it, and I'm caught up with emotions because I'm thinking about my friend that story, and because I woke up today with anxiety, and so I didn't sleep at all last night because I actually this happened just recently, and I met with him yesterday, and my wife told me compassion fatigue, burnout. She's
Yep.
like, she tells me, be careful. You
Yeah.
like now I know.
Yeah.
So I meet with him yesterday. I'm all in, and now I realize my personality is 24 to 48 hours post incident, helping a friend, like the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. Yesterday was fine, but I woke up. I didn't sleep at all last night. I was up all night. Finally got up at 4 a.m. Woke my wife up. We brewed coffee. We sat in the porch and watched the sunrise. And we talked and we talked. And I had anxiety. I had to take a benzo to calm down, which I try not to take. But my point is, for cops watching it, and Chris, you said it. It's like that. You want to be a good brother. You want to be a good sister. You want to take care of your buddy, but you have to also know your limits. And I now have to learn to set boundaries. Like I know I'm going to have post incident fatigue and anxiety. So like that affects my life. So
So real quick,
yeah,
because I
good.
know you're about to go into something with it, but I think that here's a really good learning thing, not just for you, but everybody listening. That so you know that you're going to go through this. You know that you're going to have that post helping fatigue. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason I'm talking about this is because I used to have the same thing, and I've figured out
Cool.
ways around it.
Share it with me, brother. Share it
So,
with me.
but the easiest way, especially as a coach, it's better to get you to figure it out. So anybody listening, I want you to think about this as well. You know what's going to happen. You know what the outcome's going to be. But you care so much, and this is cops everywhere. We care so much, we just go, it's going to happen. I'll just let it happen. It's going to carry on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure out, how do we actually prevent that from happening? So what could you do prior to maybe helping him, or inside of it, or directly after helping, that would
Yeah. So
shift this morning?
yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think I know where you're going. So this is good because I had to be going through so much therapy. I had to learn techniques and skills to counteract that. So
Mm.
I didn't have them before. And I had to learn about breath work and breathing exercise, which are amazing for me. I do a lot of journaling. I've been journaling since I was in the sixth grade often anyway. So that when I learned the positivity, the effects of journaling and the mindfulness, I was like, oh, I journal anyway. Well, let me look at it from this angle. So I do that a lot. I do gratitude exercises every day, every day. So these are things that I started to implement. But like you said, I know this is going to happen. So what did I do on the drive down to visit him? My dad's a therapist, actually. So I called my dad and we collaborated, we shared, I bounced some ideas off him. He reminded me of my role and to take care of myself. So these are like conversations and deliberate thought that are going into the event, which I never did before. I was like a bull in a china shop. I want to help my friends, and I'd run in there. Another friend about 10 years ago approached me and told me he was suicidal, caught me off guard. I was like, oh, I was like, he just came out and said it. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. But of course, my empathetic heart, my caring heart was like a bull in a china shop trying to help him. And then I was out for a week, like just a mess for a week because I didn't know I have compassion fatigue. I didn't even know what that is. And so again, all these things you learn. So if you're somebody that's going through that, I think you have to have a support structure. If you have a spouse or a significant other, family member, best friend, like build your inner circle and keep it to one hand and be willing to share everything with them. I mean, my wife told me when I went through my problems, share everything, because I was trying to protect her from a lot of stuff. And I think that's very common because she is a little sweetheart first grade teacher. Hello, Miss Bruckner. Welcome, kids. Like she's so sweet. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to burst her bubble. I didn't want her to see the horrors of the world that I saw, not only in combat and death, but just your communities and sex offenders in your communities. Like I just want her to go to school and work and raise our kids. So but now I share everything with her, everything, whether I want to share or not. I know now it's important for her, and I learned it's important for me and us as a couple. So I think that's important.
No, I think that's good. Some of the things, like I said, I used to get that same thing, and not quite as much. One is, it's a muscle. As you do it, like you said, 10 years ago, you had somebody and like it just knocked you for a week. Now it knocks you for, a few hours, or, maybe a day at the worst. Is one, it's a muscle and it's practice. But two, it's also putting in regular routine type things and in the intention. I recognized, especially in the last 12 to 18 months, it's very much an intention. What's the intention of this, that I'm going into this? Because if you can set an intention for it, then you can keep yourself on focus. Because where we focus, energy flows. And so if we're in that thing of, okay, this friend's going through this actually has nothing to do with me. I am just the sounding board for him. I don't need to take this on.
All right. And let me ask you, Chris,
Yeah.
because I still don't know the answer to this. I've learned a lot, but I'm still a lot I don't know. I am so empathetic, brother. I care about people so much. I love people so much that I cry sometimes. When I see somebody victimized or hurt, it has nothing to do with me. But that the level of pain, like I harbor that. I work on it with my therapist. I'm working, but it is a real thing because I know there's other first responders and you're seeing horrible things every day and you're taking it in and you're putting it in your heart and you're holding it there. And man, just try to find a way, like I'm trying to find a way to process that in a healthy way, because that could really screw your life up.
Yeah. My answer, and I take that was a question of how do I do it, because
Oh yeah,
I'm
please.
an extreme empath as well, and I recognize that as well. And I recognize that's why law enforcement possibly wasn't the right career for me, because like being an empath in the police, you need to be compassionate, but being an empath, you take on other people's energy. You take on other
100%.
people's pains, hurts. You can feel it with the thing. And then as a cop, you feel it so often because you're dealing with it literally multiple times a day
Oh yeah.
that you then end up becoming numb because you're like, I can't deal with it anymore. My tank is full of this stuff, but I'm empty. And what I've recognized, and it's the one thing, and I talk about it all the time. That's why my new URL business, and that's called Create from Why. It's because you got to know your why. And a lot of times, I mean, if I ask, well, I'll ask you in a second, but a lot of times, when I ask people what their why is, or why they want to be a cop, they go, I want to help people. I want to help the community. Some will say, I don't want somebody else to go through a domestic like I did, a sexual assault, or, have victim, whatever, some sort of, traumatic thing. And that's deeper and that's really good. But that's still coming from a place of external. It's not an internal. My why for the longest time, and my onion is, I think I'm at the core of my onion now, but you never know. Whether I do coaching programs all the time myself, and so during the one that I've been on the last 12 weeks, literally one of the first calls, one of the coaches was like, this a little bit deeper. But my why for the longest time was, I create less pain for myself and others. Notice how it was myself and others.
I love that.
So it starts with
I
me.
love that.
And that's an internal thing, and that comes back to my dad going off to chiropractic school, past traumas, like I talked about earlier, past traumas when you're a kid. But actually, I recognize that was the second to last layer of the onion, and actually, it's to be seen. My why is to be seen. So I've shifted and changed that language, because language is everything. And so my mission statement is how am I helping myself? How am I helping myself and others truly see ourselves?
I love that.
Again, starts with myself and then others. And so when I walk into a coaching session, when I walk into talking with somebody, if I'm on the street and somebody's having a bad thing, it's okay, cool. How am I helping myself be seen? How am I helping myself see myself? Okay, cool. I see myself. Cool, I'm here. This person needs me. Now, how do I help them see themselves? How do I guide them to see themselves? That way I don't need to take on all of their stuff. I can be there. I can be a sounding board for it, but I don't have to take it all on. And so then I don't get nailed by it afterwards and feel drained and feel powerless. Then also, obviously, there's all the little things that I do, the going to the gym every morning, the having goals, having visions, the, creating a business that is bigger, the reaching out to people, the journaling, in a way, meditating, the sports things that I do, all of my own passions that, again, I go back to the intention, have nothing to do with my work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Your work is your vocation. That's not who you are.
No.
And I went through this. I went through an identity crisis, and that's kind of what led to the depression, and law enforcement. And man, I needed a recalibration. My ego was out of check. I thought I identified with my title. Think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I was a detective. That's not That's not who I am. That's what I did. But over time, no, I am a detective. No, I wasn't. I wasn't. That was my job. But I had to go through those knocks, man, and figure it out. And I did.
And this is the whole, what I was just saying. When somebody asks me, who I am or what my identity is, I'm somebody who helps myself see myself and helps others see themselves. That's who I am. What I do is coaching, police preparation, helping first responders and future first responders reclaim their mental health. That's what I do. But who I am is somebody who helps myself and others see ourselves.
I love that, man. That's
because
good.
that's internal. There's no external factor to it. And so when I live from that place and I use that as a question and I do everything that, I don't need to take on everybody's stuff.
It's putting everything in the right box. And that's what I'm trying to learn to do now is I can be there for you. I can listen to you. I can hug you. I can cry with you. I can rub your back. But there's also a boundary there. I need to know to take care of myself. And I'm learning to do that. I didn't do that before. So I'm glad you said that because that's something I need to reflect on and just really be focused on that because that is important because you get burned out again. I mean, I don't want to keep repeating this cycle. I want to grow and grow. I'm going to have down days. I think we all have down days, but I want to keep evolving. And so I think that's a great advice you gave.
And it's interesting. And I'm totally transparent and honest. I literally had another effect of burnout at the end of last year where my wife went to me. She's like, what's going on? Something's going on. I was like, no, 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 I'm fine. The fine demon came out. I was like,
The
no,
fine.
no, the fine
I'm
demon.
good. I'm good.
I'm,
I'm
I'm
good.
good. I'm good. I'm fine. She's like, bullshit. You're fucking eating pretzels at 10 o'clock at night. That's not you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yes. And again, there's that awareness, that communication side, like you're talking about. And so I literally sat in and I found myself again because when I was in the depths of my darkness, was all about seeking the thrill. That whole maybe drive my truck off the road so I can probably
Hmm.
so I can feel something. Mine was on motorcycle. Let's see if I can hit that apex a little bit faster. Let's see if I can hit that turn a little bit beyond what I know I'm. And I found myself seeking that again at the beginning of the year. I was like, okay, and that's when I really started to sink full on. I was like, I know this why and purpose thing is the key.
Yeah.
And so I just sat. I just literally went, cool. I'm gonna live by it. Done. I'm just gonna live by it. And yeah, it's completely life changing. So
Dude,
I
think
want to
about your
know.
growth journey, man. That's incredible, man. Kudos
Yeah,
to you.
yeah. Oh, and it is. It's a continual growth. Our life is, I say, state, know your purpose, continual growth.
Yeah.
So, Chad, back onto you. You've gone through all this different stuff. You've seen trauma. I'm sure you saw a lot of trauma in the military, a ton of it in the police as well, continuous. You've gone through this growth journey. What do you believe your why, sitting like you are right now, your why and purpose or mission statement is currently at the moment? Or like what you
Yeah. It's
know
a,
it as?
yeah. It's a great question. When I left law enforcement last year, this is one of the things I thought about. Like, I want to know what I am, who I am, what I want, why I want it. Like, I was really deep exploring that. So I started taking like pen to paper on an index card, like I have here, and I was trying to figure out a slogan. And I love what you said because I felt like with a slogan or a catchphrase that could help me at least maybe start to pinpoint. And I just started writing, and I came up one day, and I actually showed it, to my wife, was helping one person a day every day. And it was like, it's not really a why, but it was like I was looking at it and I was like, because in my brain, I always took on these big audacious things. I was trying to slay the top of the mountain, often falling short and then getting disappointed in myself, even though I might have made it up 3 quarters. Instead of celebrating that journey, I'm like disappointed I didn't reach my goal. And then I realized it's not about 10, 15, 30, 100. It's about one person. Like, if I sit with one person and make a difference in their life as a comrade, as a peer, as a friend, and I do that every day, 365 days a year times 30 more years of life. Holy crap. You pull that back and it's going to be thousands of people. And I was like, okay. So I started really play with it. And then I realized my why, although I still don't have a specific thing, is helping people, helping people. And it doesn't have to be first responders. And this is what I kind of realize is I have had to learn to say no because I always said yes to everything. And then I felt like I was being disingenuous to my why or to my mission. So it's like this all the crazy thing. So I'm still figuring it out, Chris. I'm still figuring out where I want to go, how I want to do it. And I like to think it's going to be involving helping people. But that's a why for me. It's continually changing and a lot of thought about it.
Cool, man. Cool. Um, After we're done with this episode, I want to give you an opportunity. We'll book a time. I'll take you through the process that
Oh,
I do.
man, look at you.
Yeah, I'll take you through the process that I do that literally helps you really identify who you are because I can see the potential that you have for, and you're already doing for impacting so many people. So I want to take you through so you have that clarity so you can impact even more. So we'll organize that afterwards. But you said something, you said around that just helping one person, and I wanted to help. I remember I was in that thing of wanting to help all these people, and I'm not doing enough.
All
And I
right.
was at an event, and this tees into that, and I think it might help you as well to just have a story type thing to hold that too, so that it helps you even more than you already are doing great. I was at an event, and you're probably familiar with Lewis Howes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was at an event. He was there. It was a Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi event, and Lewis Howes won some stuff, and so he did a little bit of a speech, and he told the story, and it goes around occasionally on social media. Old man's walking down a beach, and there's starfish all over the beach. It sounds like you've heard this one.
I've heard this one. I love this. I love it.
You're
Yeah.
walking. He's walking down the beach, and there's all these starfish on the beach, and the tide's out, and the tide's still going out. And he's walking along, and he sees a kid down further on the beach, and he's like, "What is this kid doing?" And walks down there, and this kid is throwing starfish back into the ocean. And the old man goes to the young kid, "What are you doing?" The young kid goes, I'm saving the starfish. And the old man goes, again, this is history, time over time. And just like cops, when you first get into the job, you're like, oh my God, I can save everybody. I'm doing such a great job. And over time, it kind of wears down and you're just like, I can't save any of them. Kid goes, the old man goes, but you're not going to be able to save all these starfish. And the kid reaches down, picks up a starfish, throws it back in the oceans, and goes, but I just saved that one. I think that is
so beautiful. Yeah.
It's so beautiful, and it hit me so hard that day, and I can tell that it hit you really hard when you heard it as well. Whenever it was.
It's one of those things that hits you in your heart, and you're just like, "Yep, yeah, absolutely."
Yeah, and I wanted to tell that as well for law enforcement or first responders that are listening, or anybody. Remember, be present. Be with that one person that you're with, and only worry about helping that one person in the best way that you possibly can in that moment. Tomorrow doesn't matter. Yesterday doesn't matter. Right now it does. And so when you have all that trauma, like we've talked about, like you've experienced, I've experienced, so many first responders experience, people experience, just save that one starfish right now, or do whatever you can to help that one starfish get back to the ocean. Maybe they don't get back to the ocean.
That's great advice. And I'll piggyback on that. Kind of a recommendation is, and I'll give you my experience as a detective. I took on every case. I wanted to make every arrest. Sometimes my caseload was like, I don't know, 60, 70% higher than like another detective's. Like I had this fascination with like stats and number, and it was some ego. And it was also, I just wanted to help a lot of people. The more I do, the more I'm going to help. That's not sustainable. So if there's a detective or any police officer watching, quality over quantity, you're going to burn yourself out. It's a long career. Sometimes you're not going to be able to help everybody. Like you said, just focus on micro encounters, each day at a time, helping one person. It's sustainable. You can do it that way. My track was not sustainable.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. We have all these officers out there, especially these days, the numbers of cops that are leaving is higher than the cops that are coming back in, and they can't recruit them fast enough. And I believe, they're burning out because of the last couple of years, because of everything going on, the scrutiny. You got to just do what you can do. Focus on that one file that's in front of you. Yes, you might have a pile of 50, 60, 100 other ones. But if you don't put 100% effort into the one that you have right in front of you, and don't worry so much about those right now, then you can actually make a bigger impact on that one. If you're so worried about the other ones, you're probably not even going to make impact on the one, and in turn, you're not going to make an impact on any of them.
So true.
So Chad, you mentioned around, and I wanted to bring this up. You mentioned about your perspective changed, and so you decided, okay, law enforcement isn't it anymore. And I know we grow past and we grow beyond things, and we grow, so we're just at that next level. Have you ever thought about going back since you left?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I miss the camaraderie. I'm only 42. I'm still young. I'm in good shape. I thought about it, but I've in line with a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. I have learned for me, harboring on old memories, like it's going to be like that again, it's not a fruitful exercise. It's not rooted in reality. Everything in life has a beginning and an end. Everything. Our life, we're born, we die, we start high school, we graduate high school, we get hired as a cop, we retire as a cop. Everything has a start and an end. So for me, that perspective now, I understand, like me wanting to go back and hang out with the guys and save people, do that again. I see the big picture now. It just, my time is coming over. It's like an athlete almost. Like I recognize, like my time has come to an end, and it's okay. I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it. I did a lot. I served 21 years. But yeah, I did think about it. I probably the number one thing for me is leadership. I'm a leadership connoisseur. I just suck it up. I learn it. I got promoted to sergeant at 20, so I couldn't even drink yet. And now I had 4 guys under me, and a couple were older than me. And I was like, oh man. So I had to really learn. And it is the most awesome thing in the world, leading other human beings and pushing in the same direction and setting a good example. So I thought about, can I come back in maybe as a chief and work, kind of do that. But no, I'm in a good spot right now. I'm my family's number one to me. We're thriving. We're doing good. My business is going well. I get to work in t-shirts and shorts and slides. So you know what? I did think about it, but I'm thinking forward now.
Yeah. So for those cops that are in, and maybe they're starting to get that perspective, that change, but they don't necessarily want to leave yet because they're like, I really actually, I know that I still love this job. What would be your number one piece of advice to them so they don't burn out because their perspective changes? Because that can happen as well. Your perspective changes, and so the actions of what you're doing actually drains you.
Yep.
What would be your number one advice to them that if they're wanting to stay in and they're like, I love this job wholeheartedly, but my perspective's changed a bit? What would you say to them?
Write down what you want. Write down what you want. What do you want? Like, and I've asked this question a couple of times to colleagues of mine who are kind of in this transition that are unsure with it. I said, what do you want? And it's like, well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know what you want, how are we possibly going to work on an action plan to get there? I'm not saying you have to know it, but like, let's start. So my suggestion is I did this recently, actually. Just write down anything that comes to mind, everything in the world. You want to be a movie producer, a Backstreet Boy, professional, just write it down. Doesn't mean you're going to do it, but like, let's look at this list and then figure out, maybe it's a canine officer, maybe it's a detective, a sergeant. Okay, great. How are we going to get that? What do you need to get to there? And start to build an action plan. I feel like for the cops that I know, and me too, I mean, talking about myself, when it was at its worst is when I was directionless, when I was utterless. I felt like in a rowboat with no oars, and I'm literally dependent on the wind to take me to my destination. I felt like I had no control. Well, that was an illusion. That was my insecurities and my fear. That was the voice inside of my head, which, by the way, I have a book about that. I want to talk to you about it if we have time. But
Yeah, definitely.
so that would be my recommendation. I'd love to hear yours, by the way.
So when I would say the exact same thing. Write down what you want, but I would add one more thing to it. Once you write down what you want, then ask yourself, why do you want that?
Hmm.
Because the why will pull the emotion out. You attach an
Yeah,
emotion to something, you'll accomplish it.
yeah, I love that.
It'll
All right.
stick. And so ask yourself what you want, and then next to each thing that you of what you want, the ones that you're like the top three or four, go, okay, why do I want those? Why? Like honestly, why do I want that? Or and you can even go before you ask yourself why. What about that intrigues me? And
Hmm.
then why?
Yeah.
The why question is it gets you to dig deep into it. And if you're honest about it, it gets you to drive into there. I wanted to mention one thing you said about the directionless, and it popped something in my head into my sailing background. I grew up sailing around the world. We were never even planning to come to New Zealand, and on the way down to New Zealand, we stopped. We did diving, and so we used a bunch of diesel using the dive compressor and the generator, and that while we were in this dive spot. And there's no people where it was, and it's about a quarter of the way to New Zealand, and so we ended up having to stop and just bob because there was no wind. We didn't have enough diesel to keep motoring, so we just like, cool, we've got enough food on board. We'll just sit and bob. And so we started, and we left the GPS on because we had to. We wanted to make sure we knew where we were in that. And we literally bobbed for 3 days, and we did this big circle. And the time the wind picked up and we started to sail again, we were back in the same exact spot.
Oh, wow.
And that just with what you were saying around the being in a rowboat and just waiting for the wind, I was like, if you just sit there and do nothing, you'll stay in the same spot
Oh,
even after days, years, months.
I got chills because you're right, man. How many cops are sitting in their car just like going through the motions? And I was there. I know that feeling, but man, that's a sad place to be in for anybody, any industry. I mean, really, you're just waking up, you're going to work, you're coming home, you're eating dinner, going to bed, waking up. I mean, it's where are you going? What are you doing? Why are you doing? I love it, man. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And I'll add in, that's the most dangerous cop. Because a cop with no purpose, a cop with no drive, a cop with no vision is a cop that doesn't care.
Yeah, you're right. You're
He'll
right.
say that he cares, and he'll show actions where he does, and he'll have times where he does. But as I use the analogy, he'll be shooting at the target blindfolded.
Yeah, you're right. And unfortunately, some of those are even getting promoted, which is really dangerous.
Yeah. And you don't have to want to be the chief of police or have you be a canine. You can be, hey, I just want to be the best patrol officer I can. But
Totally.
have a purpose behind it. Have a vision of what that best patrol officer looks like, so you keep fighting towards that. Awesome, brother. So as we kind of work towards the kind of wrap up side, um, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So it's my name, Chad Bruckner. I was on Twitter. It's so toxic. I'm still on it, but I kind of got off of it. I just don't use it. So I'm very heavy on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the only social media. It is the only social media I'm using. You can also email me. My friend Ryan Chartrand and I, we have a show. I know you had Ryan on your show. We have a podcast as well. It's called The Breaking Bad Show. Similar to what you're doing, except you're doing way better than we are. But so you can email me at chad@breakingbadshow.com. I love to meet people. 11 o'clock at night, some stranger could text me, and my wife still laughs at me. She's like, somebody will send you some spam, and you're like going back and forth. I just love people. So, hit me up, man. Let's build some relationships.
Perfect. Awesome. And I know you've got a bit of a service that you do now, after being a police officer for so long. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have a private investigation firm. We really specialize in municipal solutions. So we'll do pre-employment background investigations on police officers, police chiefs, town managers, finance directors, kind of the important people of each municipality. And we also do leadership training. We do a wellness training, a one-day wellness seminar. We're getting into consulting now. So we're pretty much, although we're full service, we really just try to, we do a lot of, we specialize and focus in on municipal government. So we'll help townships and boroughs, kind of vet their employees and do a lot of HR stuff.
Awesome, perfect. Now you said that there was a book you wanted to talk about. Tell us about
real quick.
Book.
So I actually put this in our wellness program that we teach, and I put together because it helped me. It when I was real down. It's called The Deadly Diet, and I forget who wrote it. It's going to kill me, but it's a book written about, obviously geared towards eating disorders. But the crux of an eating disorder is low self-esteem, critically low self-esteem. And I had that so much so. And I know so many people because I'm talking to cops now and I hear other similar stories. I don't want to admit it, but it's like in their heart, they're like trying to feel good about themselves and feel worthy. And that's where we get in trouble. That's where we start to put ourselves out there in unhealthy situations or do push ourselves to make ourselves feel worthy. And this book really goes to the voice inside of our head. We all have a voice. Some are loud than others. Mine is really loud. And I had to learn I would let that voice take over and tell me, oh, you're a loser? Oh, absolutely. You're a loser. Oh, you got demoted? Oh, that's because you deserved it because you're a loser. Yeah, your family would be better. This voice is telling me your family would be better off if you were dead. And I would start to believe it. I didn't even know what a voice, I didn't even know who was talking. Anyway, this got recommended by my therapist. I read it and it really saved my life and it changed my life. It helped me quell the voice, helped me learn and talk to the voice and build my confidence and self-esteem up. So if you're a cop out there and you're struggling and you're faking it, you're wearing that mask and you're trying to make yourself feel good and you're really battling some low self-esteem and maybe this voice is in your head telling you you're unworthy, you're not good, read this book. It really is. It's an amazing book.
It's interesting you say that. My business is actually called Knocking Demon Limited because of that demon, that voice in my head. I was on my motorcycle trip and I was like, this fucking demon just won't go away. And I was like, he just keeps knocking. And my counselor was like, Chris, you got it. She referred to it as a dark wolf and a white wolf. And she's like, the white wolf is very quiet, but very right and is very empowering, but is very quiet. But when you do listen to it, it's very, very strong. And then there's the dark wolf, which is consistently just always, like you said, just always in your head, telling you all the negative things, putting you down, all this different stuff. She's like, the problem is that most people just push him away. And you go, no, that's not me. No, ignore him. And he'll shut up for a little bit. And then he comes back. And I refer to it like Mike Tyson's left hook. And if anybody knows about Mike Tyson's left hook, it's what knocked out a whole ton of people. And it comes back. And she's like, you can't ignore it. You got to listen to it, acknowledge it, and then decide what you want to do with it.
Yeah,
so
totally.
So that's why I call it the knocking demon, because he's consistently knocking at the door. And in the beginning, I had to put him behind the door so I could hear him, but not have him control me and push me around. Yes. Now I dance. Yes. Now I've learned to dance with him. I know he's in. Sometimes he's got to go back behind the door, but now I dance with him because when you're dancing alone, you're doing the two-step shuffle. It's good. It has energy. But then when you get a partner and you start dancing, holy crap! It just is a completely different energy. So
totally.
I now dance with him and the white wolf and that. But yeah, no, I love that. I love the book. So Deadly Diet.
The Deadly Diet.
So wrapping up, Chad, what would be your top tip to self-happiness? Last question I like to ask everybody.
Be selfish. Be selfish. Be selfish. Not at the risk of hurting other people, but you got to put those boundaries. And I didn't. I would just give, 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 give. I actually resented people that took more than they gave. Like when I would see it, like colleagues or just anybody, and they're like kind of always scamming and, well, how's this best for me? And like, that whole, we know those people that do that. I would get so angry and resentful about that because I was the opposite. And I realized like, I can't control them. I can't do anything about them. So, focus on yourself, control what you can control, and be a little selfish with your care. Dedicate time for yourself every day to do something.
Yeah. I love that because when you take care of yourself, you can then turn up and take care of people better. An empty
Totally.
cup
It's like
can't.
the air. It's like the airplane,
Yeah, the
analogy. You put the mask
airplane
on
mask
first.
analogy that everybody uses.
Yeah.
An
Yep.
empty cup can't fill another cup.
True. True. Can't serve from an empty vessel. Let's see how many quotes we can keep going.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see how many quotes we can get. Awesome, Chad. Thanks so much. Any last words before we wrap up?
No, man, I just want to thank you. I've been following you for a while, and Ryan told me about you, and you're doing a great job, man. I really believe you're helping cops, and it's people like you that we need. So keep up the great work, and thanks for having me on.
No, thank you, Chad, and keep doing what you're doing as well. Because yeah, I follow you guys' podcast and that, and you guys are doing some great stuff also. And it's awesome that we can help each other out and give to each other. For those that are listening, I'm sure that you got at least one thing from this episode. I know I got some stuff from Chad. I know Chad got some stuff from me. I know you will have got some stuff. Even if it's the same thing you've heard me say a million times, because I know I say the same stuff because it's effective. Have you implemented it? 2 degrees today, 2 degrees tomorrow, 2 degrees every single day, even just 1 degree every single day is going to change you in 365 days. Imagine where you could be. So just implementing one thing. And I want to thank you for listening. Make sure you share and give this out to somebody that you know. Get this message out there so that we can make an impact. Whether they're a first responder, whether they're just a civilian, whether they're CEO, whether they are just coming out of school or they're in school, doesn't matter. Share it out there because we're all going through stuff that you might not even know. And if you are looking for assistance, you need help, go to createfromwhy.com and we will organize a time to have a conversation with me, and we'll talk about how we fight that burnout with you, and or just email me at team@createfromwhy.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. Again, thank you very much, Chad, and thank you everybody for listening. This has been great, and we will talk again soon. Remember, your life is just what you want it to be. Train hard, test easy.